Good evening and welcome back to the Angry Cast. This is a rant. Now, a while ago, I was starting this playthrough of Rental Store Simulator, and I had an idea for something that I kind of brought up during the first episode, and I thought it was really interesting. You see, back in the old days, I used to write this blog called Mongo Angry, Mongo Smash. It's pretty much where everything started for me, which has culminated into now a YouTube channel. And after playing Rental Store Simulator, I thought, I've been thinking, I've been kicking around this idea for a while about getting back into writing for it, but I never actually got started with it. And the idea was, what if video stores were still the thing? Like, what if you could go, instead of having a streaming service or a DVDs or whatever, you had to go down and rent a movie to watch. And think of it. It's the late 80s, early 90s, and you have to go to your local video store because an on-demand service like Netflix or Hulu or anything like that doesn't exist. So what are you renting? Like, say you have a 3-day window of watching these movies. What are you renting for those 3 days? And, that's going to be your weekend. Friday night, Saturday night, and maybe Sunday afternoon. I mean, of course, the example I think I gave during that first episode of Rental Store Simulator was, the original Star Wars trilogy consisting of episode 4, 5, and 6. I mean, that would mean you'd watch Star Wars A New Hope on Friday night, Empire Strikes Back on Saturday night, and then afternoon of Sunday or morning, whatever, would be Return of the Jedi. But I wanted to delve into the idea further and use a real-life example because, picking the OG Star Wars trilogy was kind of easy. It was low-hanging fruit. So let's really think about these things. And one of the ideas I was thinking about was picking a theme and sticking to that theme and then picking 3 movies to justify why I picked them, and then fit all that into an entire blog post, which would then now extend into a YouTube video. Explain this overall experience. So I'm going to go with this inaugural one, maybe the only one we do because it probably won't do well. But let's do this. Let's pick Burt Reynolds movies. That's right, Burt Reynolds movies. I don't know how old you are as a viewer. I don't know your age, and I don't know if you really know who Burt Reynolds is, or I should say was. And if you don't know who that is, then maybe you should go look it up. I mean, generally, us Gen Xers and maybe even Gen Y or Millennials, he's pretty well known, at least, as an actor. It's like saying, okay, who James Dean is, or Kevin Bacon, or somebody like that, Gary Cooper, Gregory Peck, those kind of people. But just in case you're not sure, here are some highlights from his resume. Now, for you younger people, you might know there was a remake of one of his movies called The Longest Yard. Adam Sandler did it. And he did the original back in the 70s. And then Adam Sandler played the same character, Paul Wrecking Crew, in the early mid-2000s. And Burt Reynolds had a smaller role as an older inmate who played on the team in the movie, which was sort of like, something like an homage to him, kind of like, hey, we're bowing in your presence. Please accept this in our, in your honor. Probably one of the biggest hits of his later career was a movie called Boogie Nights, which is definitely not a family film that you can watch with your parents, but he played the director of this adult movies, and I forget the character's name, but he was, he got an Oscar nomination for it. So, all right, a little further backstory in Burt Reynolds. For those of you who may not know, he was considered what they would call a sex symbol back in the 70s and the early 80s. He was handsome, had a lot of charisma, and he had this distinctive laugh and comedic timing. He belonged to that old Hollywood class, like if you think about the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, or the Brat Pack with Molly Ringwald and Judd Nelson, and even into the 2000s with the Frat Pack, which contained actors like Seth Rogen or Paul Rudd or Will Ferrell. Basically, it's a string of movies that sort of have the same rotating cast among them, and they're all like, of a certain type of movie. They have these big names that are, all interchangeable. And like Step Brothers or Anchorman, Knocked Up, Pineapple Express, that group of movies. So Burt Reynolds was in kind of like that in that club in like the 70s and 80s. He gravitated more towards the Rat Pack, but was sort of like in this his own little stuntman pack, where he was like typically he was the main character in movies with like a sidekick, like say maybe Dom DeLuise, and a well-known female lead like maybe Sally Field or Farrah Fawcett or Lonnie Anderson, and then the rest of the cast were usually like well-known character actors, stuntmen, older actors from previous generations like Jackie Gleason or Brian Keith. Now, he made a slew of these movies that were really popular in the early 80s and the late 70s, and some that were not so popular, like, say, Cop and a Half or Cops and Robertsons, with him and Jack Palance. Speaking of an older generation of actors. But probably the most well-known Burt Reynolds movie from that era is Deliverance. I mean, we all make the joke about the banjo and dueling banjos and all that. But that's a movie for a different topic, for a different video if we want to do something like that. Okay, with that in mind, let's get into the stream of things here. We're talking about me as a young kid. So let's set the stage. It's Friday night. It's Friday afternoon, school is over, and I'm going to the video store to pick up a few movies to watch with my friends. We're going to get some pizza and some junk food and, just chill out, watch some movies in the basement. But I don't have a lot of money, so we're going to stick to watching one movie per day over the weekend, just to sort of like stretch out that, $12, $20 that I may have. So Friday night, Saturday night, and then say Sunday morning or maybe Sunday afternoon before everybody has to go home and get ready for school and maybe get a much needed shower and some actual food like vegetables in their system. So because we're going to go with this theme, let's go with Burt Reynolds car comedies. Now picture it in your mind, your young me. Okay, I apologize for that image and if it's any consolation. But in any case, let's kick this off. So it's Friday, I've just got out of school, got all my homework done, and I got nothing else planned. And, because we don't have email or messenger or any cell phones or chat, anything like that, my friends and I, we planned to meet up at the movie store after school, maybe over lunch or, in homeroom. So, now it's off to the movies to go find Burt Reynolds movies that have to do with cars. So after about 30 minutes of walking around, we've all settled on 3 VHS tapes available. And those 3 movies are Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, and Hooper. Now, because we're not cool, we aren't at a football game with a bunch of the popular kids. We're back at my place in my basement that's, like a... Think about Stranger Things or think about, that 70s show, that kind of a basement. We're all huddled around with pizza and bad teenage skin. We're huddled around the TV. We got Joke Cola, we got Skittles, we got all kinds of junk food, and we're going to lean into that 12 to 13-year-old male psyche and watch movies with our hero, Burt Reynolds, some fast cars, and very beautiful women. So what's up for Friday night? Well, that's easy. It's got to be Smokey and the Bandit. So yeah, Smokey and the Bandit's got to be first, Friday night. We're going to just go with that. So yeah. So what's Smokey and the Bandit if you've never seen it? Well, if you don't know what Smokey and the Bandit is, please go find out, go watch it. It's sort of about this daredevil bootlegger with a truck driving best friend. This is pure Americana from the 70s. Burt Reynolds plays the Bandit. He's like a modern day car cowboy, and he's known for like breaking the law and taking on these high risk bets. Sort of like, hey, hey, can you do this and we'll pay you to do it? There's like that one friend you had on the playground where if you dare him to do something for like $5, he'd do it, like eat a bug off the ground or eat something that's in the trash. But this was a little bit higher stakes. And he played Bandit Darville, and his best friend, who was a truck driver, was named Cletus Snow, played by Jerry Reed in the film. Now the plot's fairly simple. They have to drive to Texarkana, Texas, and pick up 400 cases of Coors beer. Now, back in the 70s, this would have been considered bootlegging because at the time, Coors is not distributed legally east of the Mississippi River. It was legal to have it in Texas, but not, say, in Georgia. And I mean, we're not even talking about Coors Light. That's how old this movie is. We're talking about banquet Coors. I'm talking about the stuff that Johnny Lawrence drank in Cobra Kai, if you watch that. I digress. So, okay, so there's these wealthy Texas guys, Big and Little Enos Burdett, and they have been betting truckers that they can't transport the beer from Texas to Georgia in 28 hours. Now, most either fail or they get arrested in the process. So they lean on the Bandit, who's like this well-known risk daredevil taker. And he takes up the bet for $80,000, which I guess, if you think about it today, it's almost like $500,000 today. And like I said, its task is simple. Him and Cletus drive to Texarkana, Texas. They load up 400 cases of beer into the back of Cletus's truck, and they have to take it back to Georgia. Now they have to evade local law enforcement. So Bandit drives this Pontiac Trans Am that's called a blocker, and he's there to draw away attention from the truck who's trying to, run the actual bootlegging. I don't want to go give away too much of this movie, but along the way he picks up this lady in a wedding dress played by Sally Field, who is about to marry the son of this sheriff, Buford T. Justice, played by the late great Jackie Gleason. And then that begins a cross-country chase, or cross-county chase, I should say, across different states, between Cletus in the truck with his dog Flash, and Burt Reynolds in the Trans Am with Sally Field next to him. And along the way, they manage to get a crap ton of law enforcement on their tail, along with Buford Justice. So that alone is just, cars everywhere, just pile-ups, high-speed chases and humor and jokes and all kinds of fun stuff with CB talk. It's that really big, huge American 70s highway stuff, Southwest America, and nostalgia. It's just really, really great. That's basically, that covers Friday night. Now, Saturday morning, everybody's gotten up after getting about 2 hours of sleep. We got to go do family things. Maybe we have some sports, and maybe we go home, let our parents know we're still alive, because we're going to be back later to eat the leftover pizza that's still sitting in the box on the basement floor. Okay, this is not out of the realm of possibility for someone like me growing up. I mean, we were Gen X, all right? We drank hose water, and we were basically feral. We could eat things that just sat around for 3 days, and we didn't even care about it. It's pretty much why we're indestructible. I mean, we're like freaks of nature, so it's okay. All right, so it's Saturday evening, and what are we watching? We're watching Cannonball Run. Cannonball Run is one of those other great road movies with a cast of basically, everybody that was alive in the early half of the 20th century. You got Burt Reynolds playing J.J. McClure, and you got Dom DeLuise, who plays this little sort of like a sad sack guy, Victor Princey, who has an alter ego called Captain Chaos, sort of like a split personality kind of thing, but it's not really like touched upon as like a mental illness. It's sort of like a running joke. And you got these casts of all these people, and if you don't know who they are, oh, wow. These are like the creme of the crop of popular people back in the early part of the 20th century, and the 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s and 80s. So we got Sammy Davis Jr., we got Dean Martin, we got Farrah Fawcett, Catherine Bach, Adrienne Barbeau, Burt Convy. You've got Jackie Chan in a very, very early role, playing a guy just speaking English, but his knows karate. It's sort of stereotypical. And you got the guy from James Bond, Jaws, Richard Kiel. If you're underage, it's 30. He's probably best known as Adam Sandler's old boss on Happy Gilmore. The guy with the nail in his head. And basically, this is based off an actual road race called the Cannonball Run, which it also spawned another movie called The Gumball Rally in the 70s. Not as well known or as funny, but still a really good movie to watch. To sort of get that idea. But it's also a cross-country road race. So they basically start from Connecticut, and they have to drive to California in the fastest time. And that means everybody's going to have like sort of a gimmick to evade police, because if you're driving, cross-country like that, you're going to be having to go fast, and you're going to have to be, breaking the law. So, okay, so you got people in an ambulance, and you got like a car full of priests. You've got honeymooners on the back of a motorcycle. You've got this you got this Japanese guy and this big tall guy in a little tiny Mitsubishi, and everybody sort of a gimmick on how they're going to try to evade the police in order to justify why they might be breaking the law. Basically going fast. So the movie is just a bunch of these vignettes of each team encountering, evading, or encountering and circumventing, or getting pulled over, not getting pulled over, being, involvement with law enforcement as they travel from Connecticut to California, and sabotaging each other along the way. Now, one of the greatest characters in the film is a character actor played by Jack Elam. He's the Doctor. He's just, Nicholas Van Helsing. He's just this like crazy, weird. He got his own theme music and everything. Jack Elam played a lot of bad guys in westerns back in the day. He's with Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds in the ambulance, and he's playing the doctor. They're playing the drivers, and they've got Farrah Fawcett playing the patient, who was kind of a kidnapped woman. And because it's the 80s, it's not really touched on, but there are a lot of things that today would be huge issues with audiences. But as they say, it was a different time back then. But anyways, their whole shtick is we're speeding because we have a patient, and we have to get from Connecticut to California. Whatever, plot holes aside, it's got a lot of these high performance car chases and flashy, expensive, souped up cars, and it's hilarious. It's quotable. it's got bloopers at the end, you know? This is probably one of the first movies that incorporated outtakes as part of the credit sequence. Before we had mid or post-credit scenes in movies, we had bloopers that played over the end movie. I mean, this movie was really a big thing in my childhood. It's one of those movies that I grew up on because it was always in heavy rotation on HBO. And as a straight male growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a lot of suggestive scenes, you know? Like, I mean, now, okay, let's move on. There was a really horrible sequel called, well, Cannonball Run 2. I loved it as a kid, but looking back, it didn't really hold up well. I mean, everybody was pretty much back in it. You know, with a new shtick for how everybody was going to evade cops. But they did not really capture the same magic as the first one. And it really had a bad plot to it. I mean, outside of just the fact that they're driving from point A to point B, they really didn't do a lot of that. I mean, half of the movie was not about them running in this road race. Half of them was about them trying to infiltrate and rescue somebody from this ranch outside of Las Vegas. Then, of course, there was actually a third movie, which was not a sequel in name, but maybe in spirit, called Speed Zone with John Candy and Eugene Levy. Now, I've never seen it. That's how bad it was. And I've seen a lot of these movies back in the day because if we didn't go to the video store to rent them, they were probably in heavy rotation on HBO. And if you didn't steal HBO as a kid and you actually paid for it, you know, had access to all these movies. And, well, I guess not much has changed back then. They had like 5 movies that they played consistently every month, and I watched it every time it came on. I guess it's the same thing now. There's always those same group of movies that are constantly on the same streaming platform that you can watch, but they're every year or every month they add in new movies. So, okay, all right. That being aside, we've covered that. So now, okay, it's Sunday morning. We're waking up, and what are we watching? We are watching Hooper. Now, what is Hooper about? Hooper is one of these, again, these 70s movies. Actually, all 3 of these movies were directed by Hal Needham, which is sort of like a stuntman guy. And this last one is really about stuntman. It's a love letter to that particular genre and time in film in America. This was about stuntmen, and basically it's sort of like a documentary version of the previous movies we watched. In fact, there's actually footage from a lot of other Burt Reynolds movies in it, including Deliverance, the famous scene of him going down the river without a paddle. Sorry, without a boat or a paddle, for that matter. But basically, a lot of these scenes are used as a description of the body of his work as a stuntman. Like he's like reminiscing about the old days while everybody's asleep around him, pretty much drunk. So, all right. So Burt Reynolds played Sonny Hooper, who is a stuntman of the old Hollywood days, who's now sort of facing his own mortality after destroying his body with dangerous stunts and basically coping with the pain by abusing painkillers and alcohol, while not calling it substance abuse because the 70s. But he's also in danger of being replaced by a younger crop of stuntmen, and he lives with his girlfriend Gwen, who's played by Sally Field, whose dad is an even older generation of stuntman, whose name is Jocko, played by Brian Keith. And he also has his best friend and co-stuntman, played by James Best, who's probably best known for playing Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane of the Dukes of Hazzard from the 70s and 80s. Now, there's also this up-and-coming stuntman, who was actually also up-and-coming as an actor at the same time from film and television, which is sort of like life imitating art here. But he was up-and-coming stuntman in the movie, and whose name was called Ski. His nickname was Ski, but he's played by Jan Michael Vincent. Now, Jan Michael Vincent was an actor who was very, very popular in the 80s at a TV show called Airwolf, and he was also in a bunch of other movies as well, including some that were nominated for awards. And he had sort of like this career that sort of sparked and took off thanks to Airwolf and some of these other movies, but then he either just didn't handle it well, or other things happened, and his life sort of kind of turned out bad. In terms of his body work and his potential. He was one of those like golden-haired, very, very good-looking guys. I remember him from a movie in my very early childhood called The World's Greatest Athlete. It was like a Disney movie. He was sort of like a Tarzan type of character who was brought over to compete in athletics for a college or whatever. It's one of those. It's Saturday, or it's a take us to the auditorium to watch a movie because we don't want to do anything in grade school. So, but he sort of actually, after the 80s and his career sort of waned, he sort of became unrecognizable. Kind of like Mickey Rourke, when he was in Iron Man 2. Mickey Rourke was one of these, like, sort of a knockoff Bruce Willis in the early 80s. He was very, very handsome, and he had kind of like a bad boy persona. And he was also a boxer, and he actually needed reconstructive surgery to face after years of boxing. So he didn't even look like himself that I knew him growing up by the time he played Whiplash in Iron Man 2. But he actually did sort of kind of have a comeback with other acclaimed movies afterwards. But, unfortunately for Jan Michael Vincent, he didn't get that. But he played this young and upcoming stunt actor. And also in the cast of Hooper was Robert Klein, who was probably more well known to younger audiences for playing the father of Grace Adler on Will and Grace. But here he plays a sort of smarmy, pretentious, pompous idiot director who just wants to create this really, really big, huge, expensive, and dangerous film to set his mark on the industry. Now, what he hopes is what will set this movie apart is this big, huge, special effect-laden climax. It involves a big stunt sequence involving driving this car, jumping this bridge that has gone out. And the film itself is basically a metaphor with the stunts and this level of danger and the consequences involved for someone who isn't young anymore and trying to stay relevant at the expense of their own health and safety. I mean, it could literally be about a lot of things like sports or other personalities. I mean, even if you look at it, in terms of real life, our armed forces and soldiers who just don't have the ability to withstand the pain and punishment of these roles over time. And we really don't take care of them in their later years. I mean, we beat them up for the promise of glory and for the sake of paycheck, and then they get an Oscar or whatever, or some kind of trophy at the end of the season. And then when it comes time to retire, their bodies are broken and horribly mangled, and they don't have the financial status and health status to get along in their later lives with the problems, whether it be mental or financial or physical. And we just really don't take care of that class of people, It's like with the gratitude and the support that they deserve from their long life and their career isn't nearly what it should be. So it's kind of like the same thing here with stuntmen. It's like they're going to be an expendable force with no name. They're not the face of the movie, the actors and the big name faces of the movie. The stuntmen just make them look good. And with the stunt in this movie, it's kind of like, it's a very dangerous thing that could actually kill them or at least paralyze them as sort of a plot point throughout the movie. But they're willing to try, and it's like, we can do this. You probably won't walk away from it, but it's sort of like this, I want to do it because it's there, because nobody else can do it. I can do it, and we're going to show them what we can do. We're the OG stuntman, and these young kids don't know how to do this. We can do this. So today, this stunt wouldn't even have been done with practical effects. It would be done with CGI. It would be a green screen effect with like a real intact bridge that would be magically erased from the editing process, or not even a real car jumping this. There would be no stuntman would be involved in this kind of thing. So this movie is kind of like a good allegory for the performances we had back then, the practical effects, the stuntmen doing these effects today, 20 years ago, even before CGI took over everything. So even with this selection of movies, there's sort of like a sobering theme or a motif, kind of like you have Smokey and the Bandit, which is like riding high, going into the weekend, just getting the party starting, and everything's still early on and happening. It's just ramping up. And then Cannonball Run is sort of at the top, where everything's sort of just running along smoothly. You're getting you're into the swing of things. You're hitting that plateau. Smokey and the Bandit's going up the hill, and it flattens out. And Cannonball Run's like, everything's good. Everything's, the sugar's kicked in, and you're just really riding high with that, that sugar rush. And then with Hooper, you're sort of coming back down on a free fall, and the ground is coming up really fast, like, Monday and work and school, and it's sort of like it all ends on as a low point. And we've been riding this high all weekend long, and now we're bringing it back down, leading into, Monday, which is kind of like how it always is. By the time Sunday hits, you're kind of like, oh man, it's almost Monday. I got to go back to work. I got to go back to school. And this is sort of the perfect movie to sort of encapsulate that free fall back into reality. Okay, well, that was kind of depressing, so sorry. But there you have it. We have our three movies for a Burt Reynolds car comedy weekend. We had Friday night, we had Smokey and the Bandit. Saturday night, we had Cannonball Run. And Sunday, we had Hooper. So now I know we don't have a Blockbuster these days or a local video store, not even like what we used to have as in the early 2000s, a Redbox to go rent these movies. And probably you couldn't even find them there because they're so old. If you even find your older brothers or your parents' VHS or DVD collection, maybe If they still play, probably, I actually probably would be on some streaming services. So I'm sure you could find it somewhere, either on Amazon or Peacock or Hulu, maybe even YouTube with ads being played in the entire movie. Maybe Netflix, who knows? But that's it. This is the first and probably the only episode of Relax and Rewind we will have. But thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and in your weekend. And let's just go find some movies. And just remember, be kind, rewind, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.